Migizi. Part 2. Dad and I headed into St. Ignace, which is located just north of the Mackinac Bridge, and then we drove over to the Museum of Ojibwa Culture, which honors the local Native Americans. The museum also honors Father Jacques Marquette, who may be Michigan's most famous explorer. Father Marquette founded both Sault Ste. Marie and St. Ignace. He was also the first European to map the northern portion of the Mississippi River, and in 1673, Father Marquette journeyed with Lois Juliet down the Mississippi River to Arkansas. Father Marquette passed away near Ludington while he was traveling north on Lake Michigan. There is a memorial in that area just south of Ludington that Dad and I have visited a couple of times before. Native Americans who were friends with Father Marquette honored him by moving his grave from Ludington up to the location of the church or mission Father Marquette had started in St. Ignace. The old church is no longer standing, but the Museum of Ojibwa Culture was built on the exact same ground as the mission. The mission later experienced a fire, reopened, and then moved to what is now Mackinac City. Dad and I obviously aren't adventurers like Father Marquette, but as we looked over his final resting place, it was a really good feeling, and it felt like there was a little bit of connection to have traveled so much of the same coastline in Michigan that Marquette loved so much. At the museum, we watched a video in an Ojibwa-style home called a wigwam. The video showed how local Native Americans made things like clothes and baskets and how they caught fish. The museum had a timeline on the wall of important events that took place in St. Ignace. A map on the wall with a lot of small bulbs that lit up showed Marquette's travels throughout the Great Lakes, as well as the travels of the Huron and Iroquois Native Americans through the area. The museum also had displays of some very old Native American tools like axes and arrowheads. Did you know the population of St. Ignace is about the same today, with around 2,000 residents, as it was nearly 350 years ago in 1675? After our visit to the museum, we headed over to the Wawatam Lighthouse, which is located at the end of a pier in St. Ignace. While there, I noticed that there was this sign attached to the lighthouse that said you could go to the museum we were just at or to the Chamber of Commerce next door to the museum to get your lighthouse stamp book stamped. I had recently gotten a stamp book when we had visited the White River Light Station. I was very eager to get a stamp for the Wawatam Lighthouse in my new stamp book. But Dad wasn't so sure I would be able to get the stamp book stamped. Dad mentioned it was after 5 o'clock p.m. on a Saturday, and it was likely that the museum workers and any Chamber of Commerce workers had gone home for the night. But I wanted to try anyway. I told Dad, as he videotaped our visit to the lighthouse, I have a feeling that someone's going to let us in. We first headed over to the Chamber of Commerce. I pulled on the front door, but it was locked. Dad knocked on the door and waited, but no one answered. I wanted to go back to the museum, so we walked over there. I pulled on the front door. It was locked. Dad knocked on the door and waited. We didn't get an answer. Dad knocked on the door again, and we waited. Dad walked over to a museum window to see if he could see anyone inside. Amazingly, Dad could see the two museum workers who he had spoken to earlier. Dad was able to get their attention, and he held up my lighthouse stamp book to the window so they could see it. Dad wanted them to know why we had returned, and that it would only take a minute to quickly stamp the book. Dad's face then got a huge smile on it as he looked over at me. I could see how excited and surprised Dad was. I wasn't as excited as Dad because I wasn't surprised. That's because I knew someone would be at the museum to let us in. Dad should have known better by now. Dad said that the two workers had pointed towards the front door. He now believed they were going to come over to the door and let us in. We heard a click as the door unlocked. We watched as the door started to swing open. We were more than thrilled when we were invited inside. The two workers were more than happy to welcome us in and stamp my lighthouse book. They were actually excited that we had returned. One of them, a very kind woman who had been teaching children about the Ojibwe way of living for many years, even made me a necklace. On top of that, she made me an honorary member of the tribe. She gave me the name Migizi, which means eagle in the Ojibwe language. I couldn't believe it. An eagle. For this to happen at the same place where Marquette was honored was a wonderful feeling. After the incredible experience at the museum, we headed off to several parks in town. Strait State Park has a tourist center with displays that show the history of the building of the Mackinac Bridge. We also visited Father Marquette National Memorial. At this memorial, located within a large park, I pushed the button and heard Father Marquette talk about different portions of his incredible journey throughout the Midwest. The park also had something I had never seen before. It had a gigantic rock, much bigger, taller, and heavier than me, that was resting on top of a buried treasure. Well, actually, the rock was sitting on top of a time capsule. I had never seen such a thing. It was awesome. The time capsule was a metal box that held many unknown surprises in it that were placed in the box back in 1976 on our country's 200th birthday by a St. Ignace LaSalle High School class. I wonder what cool things they put in there. I told Dad that on July 4th, 2076, our country's 300th anniversary, the date that St. Ignace is going to move the rocket in order to uncover the time capsule, we should come back to town and watch as the time capsule gets opened up. And I am planning to do so. And so, after all of this wonderful adventuring in St. Ignace and Wilderness State Park, there is only one place left to go.